All right, welcome in everyone. We're diving deep today into a story about a farm. Not your typical farm, though.
Nope.
This one's got talking animals, a revolution, and a whole lot to say about power and freedom.
It's a really great allegory, and you know what's striking? It works on multiple levels.
Okay.
You've got these barnyard characters, right, but the
Oh.
story, it's about power dynamics, stuff that even like a 12-year-old could understand.
Gotcha. So let's get everyone on the same page. We've got this group of animals, and they're fed up with a human farmer. They decide to stage a revolt, take over the farm themselves.
Yep, classic story setup, right? Desire for freedom, that's universal.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
A bunch of goats, led by this guy named Nodig,
No day.
they rise to power. And let's just say they're not exactly playing by the rules.
So these goats, they're clever, but sounds like a little manipulative, too.
You got
They rig the farm's election to make sure No Dig becomes the leader. Makes you think, how often does this kind of thing happen in the real world? People using, sneaky tactics to get ahead.
Oh, all the time. More than we'd like to admit. I think the story is a good reminder, though, that you got to be aware of that stuff, even when you're young.
Absolutely.
Recognizing when someone's trying to manipulate you. Super valuable.
For sure. And it gets even more complicated because these goats, they silence anyone who might challenge them.
Oh, yeah.
They kick out the pigeons who are counting the votes.
Wow.
And they even bribe the techno-rats. Those were the ones handling all the communication to keep quiet.
So controlling the information.
Exactly.
That's always been a powerful tool, right?
Yeah.
You silence the dissent, control the story, boom, you can hold on to power.
It happens everywhere, too. Governments, organizations, anytime someone's trying to censor stuff or discredit people who disagree with them,
Right.
it's a classic move.
Classic.
So Nodig takes over. At first, everything seems great. Animals are celebrating, they've got their freedom, but then things start to shift.
Uh-oh.
And this shift,
Mm-hmm.
it might sound familiar to anyone who's ever been a kid.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Think about it. New teacher starts out super cool, right? Lenient, let you get away with stuff. Then, slowly, the rules start piling up.
I see where you're going with this.
On the farm, this shift comes in the form of something Nodig calls coordination.
Coordination, huh? Sounds harmless enough.
Exactly. But what starts as coordination turns into dismantling all the structures on the farm. And who gets put in charge? All of Nodig's loyal goat buddies, of course.
Oh, the old bait and switch.
Right.
Happens all the time. You think you're getting one thing, and then bam, something totally different. And it's not always some big, obvious thing either.
Yep.
Sometimes it's hidden behind friendly language, smiles, the drill.
You really got to look beyond the surface.
Absolutely got to understand what someone's really after.
And the goats, they didn't stop there. They got rid of the farm's labor union, the one that protected the workers' rights,
Bold move.
and they replaced it with, get this, the Farm Labor Front.
Catchy.
Right. All the working animals were forced to join,
So squashing any kind of independent thought or action?
pretty much.
Yeah.
And then they rolled out these coordination laws.
Coordination laws?
I know, the name sounds innocent, but these laws were all about chipping away at the animals' freedoms.
How so?
Well, they appointed these pasture governors to run every part of the farm. And who did those governors answer to? No Dig, of course.
So creating a hierarchy, concentrating power at the top.
Exactly.
That pattern repeats itself throughout history, doesn't it? Governments, schools, even just friend groups?
Oh, yeah. And on the farm, if any animal dared to question the goats or the new rules, they were quickly replaced with someone a little more, let's say, agreeable.
Wow, so much for freedom, huh?
It's a tough lesson. Revolutions, even those with the best intentions,
Yeah.
they can sometimes lead to new forms of tyranny.
It happens.
And the farm, well, it became a much less joyful place, that's for sure. Fear and suspicion replaced all that initial excitement of the rebellion.
Makes sense.
But the story doesn't end there.
Okay.
We've got another character entering the scene, Nole, a raven.
Yeah.
This guy, he's incredibly gifted with technology. He becomes the head of the secret animal police, the SAP.
Buckets.
Yeah,
Yes.
SAP. Yeah, and he basically turns the farm into a surveillance state.
Nole, he's interesting because he embodies this whole dual nature of technology, right?
Uh-huh.
It can be used for good or can be used for evil, depends who's holding the reins.
Absolutely. And in this case, Nole sets up this whole elaborate system of cameras and microphones.
Oh, wow.
The animals are constantly being watched.
Like Big Brother on a farm.
Right. It's a bit like how kids sometimes feel like their parents are always watching, even when they think they're not.
Except in this case, it's actually true.
Exactly. And what's even more disturbing is how Nole uses psychological manipulation to control everyone.
No need for physical force.
Nope, he doesn't even lay a feather on them.
Hmm.
His interrogation techniques are so refined, he can break an animal's spirit just with words.
That's a chilling example of how technology can be misused, right?
Mm-hmm.
Invading privacy, manipulating behavior, this whole idea of smart totalitarianism. It's pretty unsettling.
And I think it speaks to some of the anxieties we have in our own world about technology becoming too powerful.
Definitely.
It's something we need to be mindful of, for sure.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, think about it. He genuinely thinks he's doing the right thing, making the farm safer, even though his methods are, well,
Questionable.
to say the least. It's like when a kid tries to justify doing something wrong,
Oh, yeah?
you know? But I was only trying to help. Intentions and outcomes, two different things.
For sure. And back on the farm, all the animals are living in fear.
Right.
They know anything they say, anything they do, it could be used against them. Not exactly the freedom and equality they were hoping for, is it?
It really shows how power can, how it can corrupt. When control becomes more important than individual freedom, things can go sideways pretty fast.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
But you know what? The animals, they don't stay silent forever.
What happens?
All that frustration, the resentment, it builds up, and guess what? They revolt again.
Another revolution. Wow, didn't see that coming.
This time, though, it's even more violent than the first.
Really?
Even the animals who are known for being gentle, the sheep, the cows, they're pushed to their limit.
So even the most peaceful creatures, there's a
right.
breaking point.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
you know what? I think there's a good lesson there for kids, too.
What's that?
Sometimes standing up for yourself, standing up for what you believe in, it's more important than following the rules, even if it means going against someone in authority.
Definitely. So the second revolution, did it catch anyone off guard?
Oh, yeah. Nole especially. He thought he had things under control. He anticipated some pushback, but not like this.
Makes sense.
He underestimated just how angry everyone was, all that anger that he'd helped create.
Oh, wow.
He gets captured during the uprising, and his family, the other ravens, they get caught in the crossfire too.
That's awful.
Yeah, it's tragic. It really shows that even the smartest, most well-intentioned people, they can make terrible mistakes, especially when they let power go to their heads.
And the other ravens.
They become outcasts. It's a stark reminder of how one animal's choices can have these huge consequences.
It's like when one kid in a group does something wrong and the whole group gets punished,
Yeah, it's not always fair,
Yeah.
but it highlights that idea of accountability, how our actions impact others.
Definitely.
So after this second revolution, a group of dogs, led by this brave Labrador named Salta,
Salta.
yeah, they step up to restore order. And these dogs, they seem like the real deal, genuinely determined to make things better for everyone.
Sounds like we're back to that cycle of revolutions we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
The old regime gets replaced with a new one, full of hope, full of promises. But the question is, will they learn from the mistakes of the past?
It's the question, isn't it? And on the farm, they hold another election, a real election this time. None of the manipulation we saw before. Salta is elected the new leader, and a new era begins.
A fresh start.
Right. But as we know, elections, new leaders, that's just part of the story.
Right.
The animals, they get to work on a new constitution.
Trying to protect themselves from tyranny.
Exactly. They want to make sure no one animal, no one group can seize too much power. Smart move. Really shows they understand that power. It's cyclical.
It's always going to be a temptation.
Yep. Checks and balances.
Got to make sure no one gets too powerful. Everyone has a voice.
That's the idea, but, constitutions, they're just pieces of paper. The animals, they have to actually live by those principles, stay vigilant.
That can be tough.
It is, even with good intentions. Power can be seductive.
Does the story tell us if they succeed in keeping things balanced? I mean,
It leaves us hanging, which I think makes it even more thought-provoking.
it does.
It's like, when kids set up a club or start a new game, at first it's all fun, everyone's equal, but then someone might try to take over, make all the rules.
It happens.
It's a reminder that creating a fair society that takes constant work, constant vigilance.
Absolutely. Something we all got to think about, no matter how old we are. How do we ensure that power is used responsibly, By leaders, by ourselves.
That's a big question.
Yeah.
One we can spend a whole deep dive on. But before we go there, let's talk about the kids, the young animals on the farm, the source material. It mentions they went through some serious trauma, right? All this upheaval, the revolutions.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine being a kid, seeing all that violence, the chaos.
Yeah, right.
It'd be terrifying.
It's like, Kids today, they see so much on the news, conflicts all over the world.
Right.
It might not be directly involved, but it still affects them.
Definitely. It's a good reminder for us adults. We got to be there for them, help them process all that stuff.
For sure. And these young animals, they're the future of the farm.
Exactly.
Their trauma, it's going to shape how the farm heals, how it moves forward.
It makes you wonder about the long-term consequences of these big societal shifts. How do you rebuild trust after something like that?
That's a big question, one we could definitely explore further. But first, I'm curious about the goats and the ravens.
What about them?
After that second revolution, what happened to them? Did they just disappear?
Well, the source material, it tells us that the ones who survived, and it sounds like not all of them did,
Right.
they learned a hard lesson about power,
Oh.
how it can corrupt, even with the best intentions.
So were they held accountable?
It seems like it. They realized they were wrong, and they pledged to use their skills, their knowledge, for good this time, working with the other animals to build a better community.
That's a hopeful note, isn't it?
It is. It shows that even when we make mistakes, big mistakes, there's always a chance to change, to redeem ourselves.
I like that. Redemption is always possible. And you know what? That's a great message for everyone, especially young people.
Right. We're all going to mess up sometimes. It's what we do after that counts.
Exactly. So before we wrap up this deep dive into the farm and its revolutions, let's connect it back to our own lives. What can we all learn from these animals and what they went through?
Good question. Yeah, it's like we've been on this wild ride with them.
We have.
Power struggles, surveillance, but also hope, redemption. But the big question is, what does it all mean for us? Like, what can we take away from all this, no matter who we are, how old we are?
Okay, let's break it down for our listeners then.
Yeah.
What are the big lessons, the key takeaways from this farm's journey?
Well, I think the first one, the big one, is vigilance. You can't just assume things are going to be fair, that justice will prevail.
Right.
You got to be active, engaged, protect your freedoms, hold those in power accountable.
That makes sense, but what does that actually look like? Day to day, I mean, it's not like we're all facing these huge revolutions.
True. But the idea, it applies on a smaller scale too. Like speaking up when you see someone being bullied, questioning a rule that seems unfair, even just paying attention to how decisions are made in your family, at school.
So it's about those small moments, those chances to make a difference, even if it doesn't feel like a big deal at the time.
Exactly.
Having the courage to use your voice, stand up for yourself, stand up for others.
And remember those goats, the manipulative ones.
Oh, yeah.
That brings up another big lesson. Critical thinking. Being able to see through those sneaky tactics, questioning motives, thinking for yourself.
It's like having a superpower.
It is. And it's a skill anyone can develop at any age. It starts with curiosity, asking questions, not just accepting things at face value.
Give me an example.
Okay, think about advertising. They're always trying to get you to buy stuff, and they use all these clever tricks to do it.
Yeah, they make everything look so cool, so exciting.
Right, even if it's not actually that great. It's like those toy commercials make you think you absolutely have to have the latest gadget, even if you don't.
I know those commercials.
But being able to step back, say, hold on, are they manipulating me? Do I really need this? That's critical thinking right there.
That's a good point. And it's not just advertising, right?
Nope, not at all.
It's everything. Like when someone's trying to pressure you into doing something you don't want to do, or even when you're reading the news, trying to figure out if there's any bias.
Especially important these days, right? We're bombarded with information from every direction. Got to be able to sort through it all, figure out what's real, what's not.
Definitely. And one last lesson from the farm, I think, is that even when things are tough, even when you face setbacks, there's always hope.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, these animals, 2 revolutions, tyranny, surveillance.
They went through a lot.
But they never gave up on that idea of a better future.
And even those who made mistakes, like Nole,
right,
they had a chance to redeem themselves. It shows that we're all capable of growth, of change.
That's a good reminder, especially for young people. It's okay to mess up.
It happens.
As long as you learn from it.
Exactly.
Try to do better next time. Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, big picture. What's the most important lesson our listeners can take away from this story? What's that one piece of wisdom they can carry with them?
I think it's this. Never underestimate the power of your own voice. Whether you're speaking up against injustice, questioning authority, or just sharing your own unique perspective, your voice matters. And the more you use it, the stronger it gets.
I love that. So to all our listeners out there, young and old, remember the animals on that farm, their struggles, their triumphs, how they never gave up on a better future, and never be afraid to use your own voice to make a difference in this world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.